So this was a week where we learned that not only is the Supreme Court just a body made up of religious zealots with the best job security on earth, but that a few of them are, in fact, more corrupt than we initially thought. Not just how they got there, who they clerked for, what the Heritage Foundation grooming them to be where they've gotten, but that the corruption is ongoing, even while they're on the bench. I'm not talking about Clarence Thomas's wife, Gini Thomas, and her release the Kraken, big lie collaboration, but beyond that, and this happened this week, where a former religious right operative turned whistleblower named Reverend Rob Schenck spoke out in a congressional hearing um, and discussed his role in literally directly helping to offer favors, dinners, and like private like trips to Supreme Court justices in exchange for their rulings around Dobbs, around abortion rights, around LGBTQ plus same-sex marriage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. His group was Faith and Action, and I'm very curious like what happened to him. We could talk about that later, but let's just bring everyone up to speed about what happened. So as we know, in the summer, the Dobbs decision comes down, but before it comes down, which effectively repeals Roe v. Wade, there was a leak.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, well, where did this leak come from? Who leaked it? What happened? And there was some thought that maybe someone in, Sam Alito's office, or maybe he himself had something to do with the leak. It has not been proven. And of course, Justice Roberts was the one to investigate it, which is strange. Again, all cops investigate themselves. I guess Supreme Court members are the same. And so Rob Schenck sends a letter to Justice Roberts saying, look, I think it might be Alito because I knew about the Hobby Lobby decision in 2014, which prevented, which basically Hobby Lobby said, we believe that the ACA should not cover birth control, and it is our religious right to deny our employees coverage of their birth control in terms of that aspect of medical care. I knew about that beforehand. In fact, I lobbied around that. And so here's the letter, and then let's look at what he has to say. So he made the Hobby Lobby leak allegation a letter sent to Chief Justice John Roberts in July as a part of Roberts' investigation into the leak of Alito's full decision overturning Roe in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. That's exactly what I just said. So in interviews, he said he was told the outcome of the 2014 case, that's the Hobby Lobby case, weeks before it was announced. He used that information to prepare a public relations push records show, and he said that at the last minute, he tipped off the president of Hobby Lobby, the craft store chain owned by Christian evangelicals, that it was winning the party in the case. The Times Investigated says that there was a few his account has some gaps, but there's a trail of contemporaneous emails and conversations that strongly suggest he did know the outcome and the author of the Hobby Lobby decision before it was made public. Now, why are Alito's fingerprints all over this? Well, because both court decisions were triumphs for conservatives and the religious right, and both majority opinions were written by Justice Sam Alito Jr. But the leak of the draft opinion overturning the constitutional right to an abortion was disclosed in the news media by Politico, setting off a national uproar. And with Hobby Lobby, according to Mr. Schenck, the outcome was shared with only a handful of advocates. So he had internal knowledge. And here he is testifying before Congress. And it's just 2 minutes, but he explains why he was in a position to get that to be privy to that exclusive knowledge, like the Hobby Lobby decision.
Operation Higher Court involved my recruitment of wealthy donors as stealth missionaries who befriended justices that shared our conservative social and religious sensibilities. In this way, I aimed to show these justices that Americans supported them and thanked God for their presence on the court and the opinions they rendered. Our overarching goals were to gain insights into the conservative justices' thinking and to shore up their resolve to render solid, unapologetic opinions, particularly against abortion. I called this our ministry of emboldenment. It was not an attempt to change minds. Beyond convivial small talk, our missionaries did not engage liberal members of the court. My recruits for Operation Higher Court were older, highly accomplished, and independently minded. They did not take kindly to being told where to go, what to do, or how to do it. Successfully deploying them required their autonomy. I did suggest tactics to cultivate affinity, but otherwise, our folks were on their own. Most of them limited their support to regular prayers on behalf of the justice's family, warm personal greetings and assurances of goodwill at social functions, and sending greeting cards on special occasions. But they might also host justices or their spouses for meals at restaurants, private clubs, or their homes, and sometimes the justices reciprocated. The Hobby Lobby leak resulted from one of these arrangements. Throughout this ordeal, I've had to look deeply at what my cohorts and I did at the Supreme Court. I believe we pushed the boundaries of Christian ethics and compromised the High Court's promise to administer equal justice.
So there he is explaining how this relationship works. The last thing before I kick it to you, Wajahat, is he says that Justice Clarence Thomas actually, like, he met with him.
Yeah.
And Thomas was like, keep it up. You're doing a great job. What you're doing has an impact. In other words, we love the lobbying. Keep buying me a steak dinner. Send me to Aspen. I want, I love all the exclusive care packages. And I'll scratch your back when it's time.
So the grooming of Supreme Court justices, right? The stealth missionaries. It reminds me of the kind of quid pro quo, wink, wink relationship that pharmaceutical companies have with doctors. I married up. My wife is a doctor, and she tells me about these perks and packages that they get. And a lot of their fellow doctors go. My wife is always very curious about it because it's kind of implicit. We're buying your vote. We're like kind of buying your loyalty to this prescription drug. And we'll just happen to invite you and your wife to this amazing 5-day, wonderful trip. No questions asked. You don't have to do anything. Just come and listen to us. And human nature and the type of social circles, especially that right wing travels in, it's an incestuous social circle.
Yes.
I use the word grooming on purpose. We have a huge story that everyone forgets about, that Leonard Leo, who is this conservative kingmaker who has helped create the Federalist Society, which is a school to Supreme Court pipeline for right-wing extremists, right? He just got $1 billion, Francesca, from Barry Said, like a right-wing conservative donor through dark money. $1 billion to reshape the future of American courts for at least the next 20, 30 years, right? So this has been a 40-year process. They identify talent in law school, conservative talent. They pick them, they groom them. They then get them into law school where they make them the leaders, and they get them good, cozy jobs like Brett Kavanaugh, who helped come up with some of the most gross, salacious, pervy questions for Bill Clinton during the impeachment. Then they end up clerking for, wait for it, conservative Supreme Court justices. And then when it's time for them to retire, guess who comes in and gets chosen? Gorsuch, Thomas, Barrett, and others. So this is a situation where I believe, and I just retweeted this, that this should be huge news. In addition to what you said, Ginny Thomas being completely corrupt AF, Samuel Alito making a mockery of the court, and Justice Roberts was so pissed. He was so angry that he promised an investigation. But once word came out that, Alito might have been the one to leak it. And now this comes out where this guy's literally telling you, I'm straight up telling you, I'm like a James Bond villain giving you a slideshow of our plan. Crickets. It's a completely compromised court.
Yes.
With 6 extremist judges in black robes who have a lifetime appointment, who have just taken away a 50-year constitutional protected right. And I believe one of the mistakes that Democrats made while they still had the House is they should have aggressively investigated Ginny and Clarence Thomas and brought this to the forefront, because you have one of the 3 major bodies that is completely corrupt.
Absolutely.
And what are we going to do? We can't do anything about it outside of reforming and expanding the court.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't foresee us doing that. Right. And I think, in this lame duck session, I agree that they should have gone farther with Ginny Thomas. I wonder what the Jan 6 committee really learned by interviewing her. I don't know actually the current standing of that. Maybe we'll find out in the final chapter, the final act, I believe, or the summation of it. But it's like the Ginny Thomas stuff is over here. This is straight up, we're buying and selling Supreme Court justices. Now, we knew this happened, with elected officials on every single level, Congress people with dark money, like you just mentioned. But again, this, and I don't know, maybe it's like my, once you get to the Supreme Court, then you stop the corruption, it's kind of like once you convert to this religion, then you suddenly are a good person. Like, no, you just do all the same things and you absolve yourself because you're the highest law in the land. And they're getting away with this openly. This isn't just, the pipeline that you mentioned. You could argue like, okay, but it's a foundation and it's $1 billion, but it's a nonprofit, and and they groom, but they really support the young apprenticeships. You could argue that this is just straight up favors. These are open favors for decisions. And the leak, who cares about the leak? It's the actual substance of the decision that we're talking about. And if you think this is in the past, right? This just happened this week. Where this is a tweet from Victor Shee, who says, not kidding here, Brett Kavanaugh, sitting Supreme Court justice, was partying with Matt Gaetz, Stephen Miller, Sebastian Gorka, Eric Prince, and more right-wing extremists the other day. How can anyone look at these Republican Supreme Court justices and take them seriously anymore? So apparently there was a holiday party. This has been confirmed by a couple other sources, but that there was a holiday party. And look at all these folks. You've got the who's who, the Eric Prince, again, Blackwater, the DeVos family Prince, Sebastian Gorka, I don't know where the hell he's doing these days, Stephen Miller, Matt Gaetz, and of course Kavanaugh. They're all just it is, again, like, what did you call it? An incestuous soup?
It's an incestuous ecosystem, and I think that's what people sometimes forget about the right wing, right? What they don't realize, it's a small, deeply connected group of individuals, funders, donors, activists, politicians. They go to the same churches, they go to the same country clubs, and human nature, right? If these are your buddies and your pals and your friends and you owe them favors, well, those favors then extend to when you sit as a congressperson or a president or on the Supreme Court, you advance their agendas, you protect your own tribe, and you can then be corrupt with impunity. And like you said, you rationalize it, and the way they rationalize it, which is so dangerous, we are here on a mission from God. Yes. God has sanctioned this behavior, and God is telling us that we must smite and smote. Maybe it's a smiting, or we must engage in the smoting of these transgender, atheist, socialist, liberal, deep state members. And so we are forced to engage in such behavior because it's a zero-sum game, us versus them. And God has told us that we have to put the kingdom of God on earth. It is Christian nationalism, which, by the way, helped influence many of the violent insurrectionists. Another thing we don't talk about because it's white Christians. Yep. And these folks who are part and parcel of this extremist movement are sitting with black robes in charge of your uterus, Francesca. Yeah. So other than that, it's all good.
Yeah, Alito has scrawled his name on my fallopian tubes. Gross.
That's so gross.
Ew. Sorry,
all your eggs belong to them.
Pretty much. And I think that you and I understand this. People listening and watching understand this. But I think a lot of media outlets and still pretend that this is not the case, that these aren't extremists, that these are somehow, they're just conservatives. They're extremists funded by billionaires. They really are, Handmaid's Tale, Christian nationalists, psychos. They're psychos. And I don't know, I guess last question for you is, what hope do you see? There's a razor thin majority for Republicans in the House. The Senate has been, I guess, a solidly Democrat now. But do you think Biden's going to budge on some kind of Supreme Court reform, expansion, discussion? They're going to keep striking his stuff down.
Yeah. I am hopeful because we have the majority. And going back to the Andor analogy, bringing it full circle, there's strength in numbers. And I think everyone has a role to play. And every one of us belongs in different institutions where if we put the pressure and we're loud, we see those people who are the gatekeepers of these institutions, they have to now reform, just like Biden and Democrats, in order to court our vote. For example, abortion, right? Once that abortion decision came out, if you remember, even though Democrats had a 1 month lead up, they're like, well, send us $5 and let's pray. But then you saw enough people say, F this, we demand action. Tell us exactly what you're going to do. And now you see Biden saying, okay, if you give me the majority, I'm going to give you this. Same thing with calling out the Republican Party as fascist, right? When Biden kind of said, oh, they're semi-fascist at a fundraiser, he saw that the response from the majority was like, this is the fight we need. And they're like, oh, maybe I should double down. So don't underestimate the power of the collective, the power of our voice. What I always tell people is we have the numbers. And the last thing I'll say, because I know we're running out of time, is Republicans are incestuous, they're well-funded, deeply connected. They wake up every day with a zealous zero-sum mindset. When it comes to school boards, they've been trying to intimidate all of us at a local level. The win here is that when the majority at local level says F this and actually meets them, they always lose. So if we organize our collective rage and anger and push forward for very popular policies, Francesca, they're not liberal policies.
Yeah.
Paid parental leave, taxing the rich, affordable healthcare, mainstream American likes it, but we need champions to voice it. And every single person has a role to play, especially in their local communities.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.